Violent brand, got it tatted on my body.
I want to say I gave myself the name Kai as a creative, kind of exiting high school. I like the name Kai. I'm very big on like Japanese culture, and Kai means of the sea. At first, I went by Kai the Mind, and the mind was given to me because if you know me, I just be thinking. So I guess it kind of fit, and I rock with that a little bit through college. But as I came back home and started like giving like new life to my artistry, I wanted to embody my artist name a little bit more, and Kai the Mind just didn't feel like mine. You know, it didn't feel like I owned it for real. So I dropped the mind and gave myself AKILI. AKILI means mind in Swahili, so essentially the same thing. It's just an evolution of it, and Kai AKILI essentially is birthed from that. Yeah.
So, when did you start creating music? No, really just becoming creative in general.
Yeah.
Like, you know, when did you take an interest in the arts?
So like my parents got me involved in a lot of stuff when I was younger, but never anything related to the arts for real. It was a lot of sports and stuff like in the neighborhood. I started getting into arts myself in high school. So by the time I got to Kenwood, I was pretty much like either with my friends who had been creating for a while, or like just learning. And we would either link up at like the piano room in Kenwood and like, you know, play stuff around there, or as most of us were doing, taking like photo classes and learning photography for the first time, digital, darkroom, all that. So the interest started there. I think being at Kenwood was good because like we were able to go to places like the Hyde Park Art Center to learn a little bit more about our craft, and they incentivized us to, or they wanted us to pretty much be involved in a lot of the programs. That allowed me to get access to mediums and a bunch of different resources to expand my craft, but also challenging me to use my mind when it came to my craft a little bit more, not just focusing on how to create something, how to paint on a canvas, but how to use your voice. A lot of other programs around the city started relating to that. Places like YCA, Young Chicago Authors, they had open mics that were for the youth strictly, and that was good because we were able to go out and see what the art scene outside of institutions like the Art Center in Chicago and schools in Chicago looked like. So just steps. I guess the evolution was pretty much started though in high school, leading up to wanting to see that more for people who are like me, and looking for people like that in college and beyond.
So, it sounds like community, or having access to a community of creatives, was definitely a big part of what got you to where you are today. So, how big is creating a sense of community with like your supporters when it comes to making your art?
Super important. I think as of recently, what I realized is in the last few years of my artistry, I've created in almost a vacuum, right? Like I've only created with like a handful of people for the sake of wanting to build a strong in-house, but in realizing how good that can be, I also realized like how detrimental that can be, because I wasn't really opening myself up to be a fan of people who I was around, who was like a phone call away, and I can be like, hey, that shit was hard, right? Like being able to be a fan of people's music for real in this last year has kind of changed my approach to that, because now I want to be involved and create with my community a lot more than I was before. I think prior to, I was just focused on like giving them a stage, and because there are so many stages out there, I can kind of get like watered down in it. So it still is appreciated for the people that they are, but being intentional about it and say like, if I know a person beyond them just knowing how to rap, if I know what their goals are, I know how to support them a little bit better, and I can create with them a little bit better. I'm like, hey, I got the perfect opportunity for you, and not just a stage for you to rap on, you know? So it's super, super important. I think that having that kind of like back and forth relationship with your supporters and your fan base allows you to be a little bit more organic. It doesn't feel like, oh, I'm just spinning their music. I mean, it could feel like I'm just spinning their music because I rock with them, but it feels a little bit more personal if you can create that relationship between the two. Ooh, I think a big part of being from Chicago played into my sound. Obviously, like a heavy focus on lyricism when it came to being able to have bars, being able to keep a cadence, and also crowd control. I think our city breeds a lot of focus on performance because we have stages like open mics, we have a lot more like local artist showcases, and in that we have a lot of ways to perfect our craft in that way, right? We're able to get on stage and try out a song that we might have just wrote last night or something like that. That played into it because going down to New Orleans, I was able to do that and bring the open mic feel to the open mics that were down there. I was hosting down there, so like practicing some songs every now and again, practicing my relationship to an audience when I'm able to talk to them and relate to them, get some feedback. I think sonically though, even on like the melodic end, it has a lot to do with it. As I mentioned, like creating in a vacuum. Like a lot of music that I have is either mixed or produced by Channel Daytona. Shout out Channel. And in that, we've kind of like found a pocket for my sound, a pocket for my cadence when I rap, and I use that also when it comes to like the melodic element, so I can kind of swing in and out of there as need be. So yeah.
How do you plan to separate yourself from the Chicago scene?
Put simply, really stepping into who AKILI is, being able to look beyond what other people are doing and truly lean into who I am. I think that allows me to be the most authentic self, and that in and of itself is different from most of the people who are around. I think also my approach to how I connect with people, I think I've done a very good job at, and this is also the Chicago in me, like going out and getting it for myself, creating stages versus waiting on stages to be brought to me. Like if a stage is needed, if I'm trying to get some raps off, I'm gonna make sure I'm rapping. I'm gonna make sure that I'm making that. And the city does breed that, but I feel like in the way that I do it, that sets me apart a little bit. I can do, you know, things in the way I view best. A big goal is to either orchestrate a band or orchestra, conduct the orchestra, right? Like to be able to work with a large group of musicians all at once, to whether that be, I just saw Metro Boomin do that for like an hour and a half. That shit was insane, but it was great because it was nigga shit, you know. But it was great to be able to give some, I guess, class and show a different approach to how, because black people are music, right? So like we can touch it and implement it into any form, any genre. So I think us being able to do that with bands like marching bands, like in the South, or like, you know, orchestras in general, and any other form of like constructed music. Like it's different putting a 5-piece band together, which is very intimate for sure, but like different sections all at once and they moving on your beat. That's a different level of control. That's a different level of like connection with sound that like I'm kind of longing to experience. That's one thing for sure. But generally, I would hope that people were moved and impacted enough to want to do more for themselves as musicians, as artists, to go beyond just saying, yeah, I mean, like, yes, I rap, but what else do you do? What are you doing with rap? Yeah, so Black Tide Entertainment was a student organization that I started at Dillard University. I pretty much got with a lot of creatives who were similar to myself, who are either had a lot of talent and not that much exposure, or like more than anything, finding other people who had a lot of talent and had no stage at all. I was going down there, before I went down there, I didn't even rap. I was only playing piano. I was only doing a little bit of poetry and spoken word, but going down there, I wanted to create a band, find other people who played music, who found interest in sound, and I did, but I found more rappers and people who were vocalists and ready to use their voice, and so that kind of inspired me to use my voice to start rapping and whatnot. We needed a place to get our raps off. We started open mics, we started a bunch of events to create that stage, you know, as I mentioned, for other creatives. I feel like that spirit was good because it carried over when I came back home. Black Tide stayed down there in New Orleans, but didn't last just because like it didn't have like the driving focus that I kind of do now. Enough that I couldn't give it to somebody and be like, hey, here's a blueprint. We were still kind of figuring out as things were going on, and you're only in school for so long. So it didn't really sustain itself in New Orleans, but in Chicago, I wanted it to exist in a similar way, to be able to provide a stage for the talent that was in Chicago. However, the market was kind of not oversaturated, but it was a lot of events going on, a lot of people trying to be that next thing, and we were catching a stride for real. But then the pandemic happened, so like us being like a solely event-based company or collective made it kind of, you know, watered down, and we couldn't do as much. We had to pivot. I think when we started focusing on how to truly be there for artists, I think I realized that we needed to rebrand. Similar to Kai the Mind not being a name that I gave myself, I didn't name Black Tide myself. I kind of just took the reins on it after, you know, years and years of working with the infrastructure. I wanted to change it to make it something that was a bit more of a statement, and Forever Noir is how that was born. How that's changed and different from Black Tide is that now, specifically, more directly, we're a record label, a media house more than anything, but a record label is how we support the artists, with a focus on creating records, of course, but primarily on getting artists better platforms, better ways to sustain themselves as artists, pushing forth a lot of different initiatives that I don't want to name currently, but a lot of different initiatives that are pro-artist enough that we can change the narrative on how the music industry treats its artists or treats the creatives that make it up so vastly. So, yeah, that's where we're at now. Oh man, that's a loaded question. A lot. I got a lot coming. Next month, I don't know when this is dropping. January, late January, I'll be dropping a single called Frequency. That'll open up this next arc of mine called Explore the Mind, which is the follow-up from this past arc, which is closing, called Test the Heart. So a lot is coming with that. New story beats, new narratives, a lot more of me telling stories through different mediums, not just music, not just the sonics, but giving more visuals and more purposeful presence in how I bring up stages for myself and other artists.